Hello, Office fans. I mean, advanced acting and directing, but according to the discussion post, a lot of you are talking about how The Office has a lot of characters that you enjoy and are identifying some of the traits of that character. So I decided to have Office characters join me for this video. So we have Nard Dog here, we have Michael Scott here, we have Jim Halpert. So today I'm going to talk about Commedia dell'arte and the idea behind what that means. So I'm going to switch to my PowerPoint that I've posted on Canvas. So watch this video and then I'll talk about what you should do after you've watched this video and kind of put to the discussion board. So, what is Commedia dell'arte, or Commedia dell'arte, as some people say? So, it's basically at the bottom there. It's improvisational comedic theater in the Italian Renaissance. So, that's a mouthful, but I'll kind of talk about each aspect of what this type of theater did while it was around at its height, and also the kind of legacy it has left for modern day sitcoms. So on the discussion board yesterday, you answered like what was one of your favorite sitcoms, what's a character and two or three traits, their physicality, their facial expressions, and do you know how they would react in certain situations? So that helped your thinking about what commedia dell'arte means. So for today on the discussion board, that will be a post to answer the bottom there. At the end, 3, 2, 1. What are three new facts you learned about commedia dell'arte? Two connections you have, text to world to self. So maybe you find a connection to why did I ask about modern day sitcoms? Maybe you find a character that is like a modern day sitcom character that is existed in the Commedia dell'arte world. And then one question that you may have as you looked at this discussion about Commedia dell'arte. The other thing, too, is that you're also going to watch the 9-minute video that the National Theater also uses to introduce students to Commedia dell'arte. So after you watch these notes, go ahead and watch that video if not already done that from yesterday. And so you can also ask yourself questions from that video or also look at the three new facts you learned from there or connections you had while watching either these notes or that video. So, Commedia dell'arte is professional artists. They were 7 men and 3 women. Usually, there was 10 players in this traveling troupe, and so they traveled around Italy. They traveled around France, and they usually portrayed comedies. And so, there's an illustration of Commedia dell'arte on a stage there. The height was 200 years in Italy from 1550 to 1750. And like I said before, it was performed by traveling troops. Permanent theaters really did not exist up until this time of the Renaissance, so they would have to travel town to town and perform their comedies. And where they performed was usually outside in a public forum, so there was no permanent theater, so they would go to the market, they would go to the town square and perform their plays. There was no written script. There was no written dialogue. There was not necessarily exact lines that one had to say always. So these scripts as we know them, there were just outlines that we have. So basically, what provided the content was improv. They improvised the scenarios. They had an idea of what the story was and what were the major events, but the dialogue, the actions, all were improv between the actors. So the scenario, that's exactly it. It was the script without dialogue. And so it was written by the company members. It was not written by, outside playwright. These 10 members collaborated on creating what the story was. And what they also did is we have a lot of these scripts left over, and they were not necessarily scripts like we know them today. They were just outlines. They were, the lovers had to do this. Pantalone has to do this at this point. And then how that was resolved was usually improvised between the company members. So like I said before, they were just loose plot outlines instead of actual nailed down ideas that had to happen. There was a clear storyline, so they usually told a conflict that between lovers usually. So, mistaken love, mistaken identities were some things. There was competition for affection usually by members of the company. Mischievous servants. So sometimes servants were directly messing with their masters or sometimes indirectly. And also cases of mistaken identity. There was a lost letter, etc. So these were ideas for the scenario. So basic comedy situations: love, mischievous servants, and mistaken identities. So the characters, who are these characters? They're what called stock characters. This is a vocab term associated with the Commedia dell'arte form. So they're similar characters throughout the various companies. That if I saw one company in Italy and another company in France, I knew the sort of characters I would go see. I knew the type of story I would go see. So the performer would kind of really hone the character that they had throughout their life. They would really perfect their pantalone. They would really perfect their capitano. They would really perfect their arlecchino. And so they would really get to know how this person would react in any certain situation. The other key aspect of these characters is masks. And so the idea of what this mask would look like, there were similarities between characters. So again, if I was an audience member and a new troupe came through, I could tell which actor was a certain character because of the mask they wore, how they moved. So I may see different troupes, but not necessarily the same. I would see the same characters. There was various categories to these characters. So there was male servants, there was female servants, and there was upper class. And the National Theater Video also does a good job of breaking down how this hierarchy works within the company. So I'll talk about the male servants first. And because this is like the main character people know Commedia for, it's the zany or zani. So it's the origin of the word zany. So the zani is a general term. So it's a servant. It's a goofy servant. So one of the more specific type of zani is the character of Arlecchino or Harlequin. And you might have heard this name before, Harlequin. So it's usually the leading player. The main character was this Arlecchino or Harlequin. This servant is very clever. They're very acrobatic. They are a prankster. They pull pranks on their master. And so it makes fun of the upper class and makes them look bad, sort of in the comedy of manners vein. Another zani is Brigella. He is the thief or the bully. He's very streetwise, and maybe he's also the merchant. So, sometimes the settings of the Commedia dell'arte was a coffee shop or a marketplace, and so he was usually the one that would run the business. The second type of zani would be Scapino. Scapino is also crafty. He doesn't have any morals. He also runs from danger. So he might pull a prank. He might do some mischievous deed, but also run from that. And then Puccinella. Puccinella is also a third type of zani. This person is humpback. They're stupid. And if you know the puppet show Punch and Judy, this is where this evolved from. And so this person would beat other characters up with their fists, and we also have that remnant of that puppet show. So the zani, the Arlecchino, Harlequin, all of these have various types, but the commonalities is that they are servants. They are low common class folks. Another type of specific zani that usually a lot of companies had was Capitano. Capitano is one of my favorite characters. This is the braggart soldier. He boasts a lot. He always talks about his battles or his loves across the world, but he never admits that he failed. So if he's confronted with a battle or confronted with something that he may have miscommunicated with a lover or a battle, he never admits it. So he always talks the talk, but he never walks the walk, is another way to look at what Capitano does. The other aspect of Capitano is he's usually Spanish. So usually these companies were French or Italian. So he's a foreigner. He's usually a Spanish immigrant to that country. And so that also provides more of a spin on this Capitano character. The female servants. So usually these female servants are cleverer than the males. So Commedia is the main female servant that people see. She is very, very, very clever. She's high-spirited. She flirts with the men, both the zani but also the masters. And she just can manipulate the men. She wraps them around her little finger. And sometimes she has a mask, sometimes she doesn't. It just depends on the company. But again, she is probably the smartest person on that stage. Of the 10 characters that they choose, Commedia is the cleverest. So after the servants, we have the upper class men, the old men. Pantalone, He's a middle-aged or old man, and he is very miserly, which means he's stingy with money. He's very rich, but he never uses his wealth to help people. He usually is a widowed person, so he might be trying to find love again. And one of the conflicts that usually ensues is he competes romantically with his son, that he is also going after the same lover. Maybe if he is married, he might be deceived by his wife, but he's also overly protective of his daughter. So the relationships of Pantalone come in many forms, but usually the main trait of miserly, protective, he's usually going after love in the wrong ways. That is who Pantalone is. Another old man is Dottore. He's usually a friend or a rival of Pantalone. So depending on the company, depending on the type of story that the company wanted to tell, Dottore and Pantalone's relationship can function in different ways. Usually he is involved with the affairs of others, so that means how does he relate to the lovers? How does he relate to the main servants? He's very educated, but he does lack common sense. So he usually double talks, he mispronounces words, and he's usually the absent-minded professor stereotype. That one of his main catchphrases or types of things he would always use is that he would expound upon something he knew nothing about and would look really stupid. The term "you're full of baloney" comes from Dottore, because the most well-known university, the oldest university in Italy, was the University of Bologna. And so Dottore, being educated from that university, was full of baloney. He did not know what he was talking about. So this is Dottore. Then we have the lovers, the innamorati. So sweetheart, young lovers, they are the only ones that do not wear masks because they're too beautiful for the mask. So they were speaking refined languages. The conflicts usually center around these lovers. There's at least usually a pair, but there might be two pairs of lovers. And so there might be a love rectangle, there might be a love triangle, etc. The idea of Midsummer Night's Dream, kind of having an idea of this love triangle, is kind of taken from Commedia dell'arte, how Shakespeare uses it. So this is usually the center of the conflict, or one of the conflicts that involve the Commedia. So those are the characters. And one of the aspects of the performance is the lazzi. Lazzi is the plural form. Lazzo is the singular form. So lazzi is many. And usually what a lazzo is, it's a repeated bit of comic business that the actor has rehearsed. So one of the examples I have there is the lazzo of the fly. So Arlecchino might have a rehearsed bit where he sees a fly and he keeps trying to hit the fly, but he keeps hitting himself. So it's very physical comedy. It's very much like the Three Stooges in that sense. On the right side is the burla. These are vocal gags. So instead of physical bits of repetition, these are the catchphrases of today. They are Homer Simpson's "Doe," they're Fred Flintstone's "Yabba Dabba Doo," Jack McFarlane's "Just Jack," Joey Rousseau from Lawrence, "Whoa." Think of any catchphrase from a modern sitcom, this would also be considered a burla. So on the left side, you have the physical side, the lazzi, and on the right side, you have the vocal side, which is the burla. Another aspect of this performance is the costuming. They're very traditional and they're usually common. So the second bullet point there, Harlequin, he uses a patchwork jacket. It's slapstick. That's what the slapstick comedy comes from. This is a prop he uses. He uses it to beat others. Sometimes it is reversed on him and others beat him with the slapstick. The other thing that is usually common about Dottore is he has an academic robe to show that he is a professor or a doctor. Then the masks. Almost all the characters except for the lovers wore them. They were made of leather and hair. Pantalone usually had a hooked nose. Harlequin had a long phallic nose. So these were all ideas that were present in the mask and common among troops. So as we kind of wrap up these notes, one kind of question or connection you can ask yourself on the discussion board: what are some different examples of modern day stock characters? Moliere, if you know who that is, or if you know some other Shakespeare plays, they were influenced by Commedia.